Saving a mum-and-pop shop. As I walked into the quaint little shop on the corner of my street, I couldn't help but feel nostalgic. It was a mum-and-pop store that had been around for as long as I could remember. The shelves were filled with all sorts of knick-knacks, from handmade jewelry to vintage postcards. The only problem was, the store was struggling to stay afloat. The foot traffic had dwindled and the store owner, Mrs. Lee, was at her wits' end. I watched as she tried to put on a brave face for the few customers that walked in. I could see the desperation in her eyes as she rang up the sales. It was then that I decided I wanted to help. I didn't have much to offer, but I knew that every little bit counts. I approached Mrs. Lee and offered to help her with the store. At first, she was hesitant, but I convinced her that I was just trying to lend a hand. She welcomed my offer with open arms, and we got to work. The first thing we did was rearrange the store. We made it more inviting by moving the merchandise to the front and making it more visible from the street. We also added a few colorful displays that caught the eye of passers-by. Mrs. Lee was grateful for the help, but she was still worried about the store's future. That's when things took a turn. A few days later, a new store opened up down the street. It was a big box retailer that sold everything from home goods to electronics. The prices were cheaper, and the selection was larger. Mrs. Lee was devastated. She knew that she couldn't compete with the prices or the selection, and she feared that the new store would be the final nail in her store's coffin. I wasn't about to let that happen. I knew that we had to come up with a plan. We decided to focus on what we did best: customer service. We made it a point to greet every customer that walked in and make them feel welcome. We took the time to get to know our customers and their needs, and we made sure that we had something for everyone. It wasn't long before our efforts paid off. Customers started coming back, and they brought their friends. They loved the personal touch that we provided, and they were willing to pay a little extra for it. The store was buzzing with activity, and Mrs. Lee was ecstatic. But our success didn't go unnoticed. The big box retailer didn't like that we were taking away their customers, and they decided to play dirty. They started spreading rumors about our store, telling people that we were overpriced and that our merchandise was inferior. Mrs. Lee was heartbroken. She didn't know how to fight back. That's when I stepped in. I knew that we couldn't let them get away with it. I contacted the local news station and told them our story. They were intrigued and decided to do a feature on our store. The segment highlighted our commitment to customer service and our unique merchandise. It also exposed the dirty tactics of the big box retailer. The segment went viral, and the response was overwhelming. Our store was flooded with new customers, and the big box retailer was forced to apologize publicly. Mrs. Lee was in tears as she hugged me, thanking me for everything. Today, the store is thriving. It's busier than ever, and Mrs. Lee is back to her old self. I'm just happy that I was able to make a difference, even if it was just a small one. It's a reminder that every little bit counts, and that sometimes, all it takes is one person to make a difference. A neural narration story.